telling y'all, every single time I hear that music, it's like I'm just warming up in the back. I'm telling you, I'm getting ready. All right, you guys, I am super duper excited tonight. Y'all know who this is, Dr. Brad. This is currently, and I say currently, the Men of Impact show. And you're probably like, man, what is Dr. Brad talking about? Guys, we taking a pivot. I'm going to just get started off like that. See, because normally I get started off telling you this is the Men of Impact show, and we do these, amazing three things, discover your calling, pursue your purpose, and all of that stuff. But we're taking a pivot. I'm gonna just put it out there right now. So before I tell you to like, share, and subscribe and do all that stuff, Dr. Brad is taking a pivot. Heck, in the midst of all this stuff going on with coronavirus, and pivot is such a hot topic, I figured I would pivot with the show. And I'm not just talking about pivoting today. I'm talking about pivoting with what the whole theme of the show is about. So for those of you who know me, y'all know I have an absolute passion for purpose. Me finding my purpose was something that was literally monumental in my life. It was one of the things that helped me to be able to live this life that I like to help coach other men on, about this simultaneous success and fulfillment. It was a big piece for me to be able to get that simultaneous success and fulfillment. And as I started, particularly several months ago, started talking about purpose and this, I started realizing, you know what? In the midst of everything that's going on right now, when it comes to coronavirus, when it comes to some of the racial tensions, when it comes to just so many of the things that are causing so many financial difficulties, mindset struggles, let's just call it overall underperformance in our lives, things that are just obstacles and challenging us to be our best right now. We're facing a lot of obstacles. And many of us, it's hard for us to focus on purpose. Like, what is my purpose right now? Because we got so many things that's just right in our face stopping us. It's like, look, Doc, I can't focus on purpose when I'm trying to get paid so I can keep food on the table. I'm trying to hit my goals so that I can make some things happen. And so, guys, I'll be honest, I kind of had to zoom out. And I started realizing that people right now, and I'm just being completely transparent with you, people right now don't need purpose. I mean, yes, ultimately we do need purpose, but I feel like people need performance right now. I feel like people need the mindset that they need to have in order to be able to achieve the goals that they need to do right now. I feel like people need to overcome obstacles. I feel like people need to triumph over their challenges right now. And that's what people need. And so typically you would hear me say on this show, it's Men of Impact show, and we help people pursue their calling and find and discover what that purpose is and turn purpose into profit. We're going to be turning it a little bit now. All right. So this is the show where high achieving men, my ladies, you're always welcome to go ahead and watch, but I like to target men. It's a show where high achieving men are going to do three things: achieve their goals, improve their productivity, and gain clarity on their purpose. And you notice that purpose thing is last. And I put that intentional because we need those other two things first before we get to that purpose. Shout out to my man, Oliver Crandon, my spiritual coach. We were talking about this the other day. And it was just like, you know what? We need to give people what they need. And for those of you who know me as a performance coach, it is my absolute passion. It is why I live day in and day out. And I have been grateful to have great coaches in my life and men who've helped me to show me how to be able to improve my productivity, how to be able to perform at a high level, both in my professional and personal life, and how to have the mindset and habits to be able to achieve the goals that I'm going after. And so I'm seeing in this season, it's not so much about purpose as it is performance. So we're about to go in on performance. You're going to hear this every single week. You're going to be hearing me talk about performance. And just so you know, you might even see a different name on the show. You might see some different branding. Sometimes when it's just time to pivot, but you got to get out there. Sometimes you got to take imperfect action. You got to take imperfect action. That's what I did. I was like, man, I got to start doing something. And so many of us, just like myself, I got that perfectionist bug too. But I started realizing, you know what? Even though I took action, you course correct along the way. All right, you guys? So we're going to be talking about performance as we move forward. So again, 3 things that we're going to help you do on this show is to be able to help you achieve your goals, improve your productivity, and then pursue your purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Brad, your faith-based performance coach for men, helping high-achieving men be able to combine both success to gain more success without sacrificing your personal fulfillment. So now we get to the point where I say, this is your opportunity to like, share, and subscribe this information. If this is blessing you, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you share this with somebody else that you know can be blessed with this information. If you're watching this on the replay, we appreciate you. This will soon be a podcast because of the man I'm going to be having on tonight. So let me go ahead and get into it. Now, you guys know I usually give a little freebie or something, but because I'm kind of talking about this pivot, we'll save that for another time. I got a phenomenal guest in the bullpen right now. And let me just tell you, I don't know if you've ever had a friend or you met somebody who you just like, that's just a solid dude. Like, this is just like Dr. Darko is just a solid dude. From the day I met this guy, I can always remember just high integrity ever since I met him. We'll kind of go into our story because our story has crossed paths a few times along the way. Back whenever we was grinding at Grady, in our residency. But let me just tell you, man, this dude is just a solid individual. He's a board certified general surgeon, entrepreneur, and best-selling author and podcaster. And he's pushing the limits of what it is, what the status quo has called a doctor. And so he hosts a podcast called Docs Outside the Box. Literally, we have a legend on the show today because this dude's podcast is literally top 10 in medicine, one of the top podcasts out there on the Apple podcast, top 100 in careers, probably even more than that now. He's probably going to be mad at me because he's like, Doc, I done moved up since then, right? And on this podcast, he highlights stories of doctors doing extraordinary things outside of medicine to inspire other doctors. And quite honestly, I encourage you, whether you're a doctor or not, to listen to his podcast because his podcast overwhelming theme is what we're talking about tonight is how to be more than what your career title defines you as. How to get outside of that box. We're going to talk about how he and I used to be in that box. He's got docs now starting podcasts and doing things completely outside of what the norm of what most people kind of saw us in. And so he's going to be telling us his story as we go into that. But listen, man, I'm honored to be able to have him on today. So my friend, my brother, my podcast coach, Dr. Nee, what's going on, man?
No, man, what's good with you, man? Listen, you got me hyped. So I'm going to hire you as my hype man for my show. Every time my show starts, you're going to be my hype man. I'm going to kick you a 20 or something like that. Because that intro was fire. It was legit, man. Thank you. Dang.
So first of all, listen, he came on. If you can hear his audio, we were doing kind of like a sound check. First of all, I don't even do a sound check before the show just started. I just started. If y'all hear his audio, it's so crisp. I feel like he is literally in the room with me. So
man.
You can tell this dude is a podcaster. So he got the mic. He got it all ready.
Oh yeah, man. Listen, I mean, you got to have the audio correct. People are listening to you, and the only modem or the only mode that they're really connecting with you is through your voice. So you got to make sure that the audio is good at least. The face here, that needs a lot of work, and all this stuff needs a lot of work. I can take care of all that, but this right here, I can't play around with this. So that's why I come correct with the microphone.
And look, we got to give a couple shout outs because you already know Andrea Evans is on. She said, look, I got it shared already. What's going on, Andrea? Trademark, phenomenal expert. She said, shout out to Medical Moguls. My man, Reggie Hilliard. What's up, man? Appreciate you. Reggie was on the show, one of the first guests on the show. So, I kind of introduced you, kind of told people what you do, but tell us about this Docs Outside the Box podcast, man, because quite honestly, you're blowing up right now. You've been blowing up. I'm going to tell people the story of when I found out you were doing a podcast. I was like, oh my gosh. But Tell us what the show is about.
So the show is about ordinary doctors doing extraordinary things, right? And that could mean so many different things. But for real, we focus on, talking to docs about ways in which they can just kind of break out the typecast of just being a doc. So we focus on three things, which are money, right? How to make the really smart personal finance decisions that you can make so that you can give yourself the runway to be a doc outside the box. So we're talking about, should you pay off your student loans early, or should you treat them like a pet, or a plant and just keep them in the back, keep them in the background until, you know what I'm saying? Right. We all been there.
Yes.
So we talk about that, we talk about how to invest your money. Cause I think one of the things is that, when you are becoming an expert on the human body, you spend so much time focusing on that. It's really difficult to kind of try to balance. Well, let me be as good as I can on making sure I understand the body. And then let me understand how to invest at the same time, or let me understand what's going on with tech and stocks and all that stuff. So I think not all docs, but I think the majority of docs are like, look, let me just get, single-mindedness of purpose and focus on this. So when it's time to, start investing, even when you're early in training, and or when you become an attending and you start to make a bigger salary, a lot of docs don't know what decisions to make, what stocks they should buy, what funds they should buy. And as a result, they end up hiring people. And as you can see where this is going, oftentimes there's a target on their back. So we talk about ways in which you can, invest your money smarter. And then we talk about mindset, which is kind of where you are at, right? Like we talk about the growth mindset, everything about my growth mindset. We focus on that. So fixed mind. I can't even finish the word. We don't talk about fixed mindset on the show. We don't mention any of that stuff. So we talk about growth, right? We talk about being in one place and then not being satisfied with that and moving on. So we show different examples of that. And then last but not least, but the one that I'm really passionate about is mission, right?
Yeah.
So we talk about just doing things that are not just about you. So we talk about humanitarian work, doing some medical humanitarian work in other countries, or maybe doing some social advocacy for people who may not be in the same position or station in life as you. So those three things are what we focus on the show. We have real conversations. It's definitely not what you would expect a regular doctor show to be about. It's definitely not surgeon lounge talk or physician lounge talk. We just keep it real. And it's almost like barbershop talk. And we've been going on.
This ain't Grey's Anatomy, bruh. This ain't Grey's Anatomy. This ain't that. So I got to take people back a second, because man, you talk about people like literally changing. Like, to give people a little bit of background, man. So Dr. Nee and myself, we train together. We train together in Atlanta. And I can remember nights being in the ER, man, when the knife and the gun club went off, working with you. And, as a resident, it could be, you just mentioned, we get so focused on being experts at being able to heal and save people's lives, particularly in the ER and trauma surgery and all this other stuff. Like we didn't get to learn all that other stuff, but I knew Dr. Nee back then. And I want you to tell you, he was always a stand-up dude. When I was trying to get things done, you were always just a sound guy. You know what I mean? And I appreciate that. But now that was like what? 2009, 2010?
Yeah, that's when we met.
Fast forward to 2019, 2018. I can't remember when it was. And literally, I'm at a conference because I'm starting to get this itch, like I got to do something outside the box as a doc. Now, mind you, Dr. Nee is at this same conference. I ain't seen Dr. Nee in years. And I run into him and I'm like, yo, what you doing here? He's like,
what you doing here?
Yeah, you asked me what I'm doing. I'm trying to learn something, man. He's like, we start talking. He's like, yeah, man, I launched a podcast. I teach educating folks on, this money mindset missions. I'm like, what? Like I felt so far behind. I was like, and I was immediately like a groupie. I was like, shut up, Dr. Nee, like stop. And I've seen the transformation from one area to then. So I want to encourage people, man, like, massive things can happen over time, dude. You've built a big podcast stage. You've got a lot of listeners. You impact the lives of a lot of people. And I've literally seen it. So I gotta thank
you.
you, but that leads into this next question, which is, I love the three things. First of all, money, mindset, and mission, because it's what people don't understand is that as doctors, these are things that we lack, and it's probably not just doctors, but it's probably just professionals. Now I'm talking to men, but I mean this could really be talking to anybody. But as it relates to men, I know a little bit of your story, but I want to know how these things became passions for you to be able to educate other people about it, because it wasn't just all roses and daisies for you.
No.
So I want to take people through when we talked about this recently, when you started realizing like, man, I think I might have played my cards wrong in terms of how I am as a doc. Take us from there, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it even all the way to the early and keep it quick. Like I'm a kid from New York, from Queens, New York. And when I was growing up, you know, not too far from Shea Stadium where the New York Mets were playing, I literally could hear when they won the championship, you know. And you know, also in New York, the New York Giants were at the time doing very well. And despite all of that stuff, seeing TV and seeing sports and all that stuff, that didn't resonate with me. What I saw on TV was, you know, I wanted to be a physician. I saw it on TV. All the TV doctor shows was the things that I wanted, right? Like the concept of Heathcliff Huxtable was something that really resonated.
Heathcliff, hold up.
That's why I mentioned the concept of Heathcliff Huxtable, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And, you know, just living in Brooklyn and having a beautiful wife who's a lawyer, having kids and, you know, just really down to earth, a great dad. Like all of these things are just things that resonated with me. Then it's Doogie Howser. Then it's, you know, all these different shows, ER. I was like, man, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And fast forward, and, you know, I said it earlier, like you have this single-mindedness of purpose. And I think anybody who is trying to get a career, you know, oftentimes they find themselves where they feel like, you know, they're on this hamster wheel. Like, you know, you got to focus on the next 2 years or 3 years. And then whatever you are, you know, presently really doesn't matter. But where you are or where you want to be in 2 years, 4 years, 5 years is what's always on your mind. You never take the opportunity to smell the roses. So you understand that. So that's what I was doing. Yeah, and it wasn't until like my last year of training. So we're talking about after medical school. We're talking about after 5 years at Grady and an additional year at University of Miami. You know, my father got sick and, you know, I was kind of stuck in a situation where should I do some additional training or should I come home, work from home and then help my parents out? You know, kind of things that I've always wanted to do. And it really, when that came about, you know, it really that wasn't just the first thing that kind of struck me. I started to realize that I really was missing a lot of things that were happening in my family, a lot of weddings. There were unfortunately, some funerals that I missed. There were some, you know, just celebrations that I normally would have gone to prior to medical school or prior to residency that I was just missing out. Not calling home, not calling my sisters, not calling my nephews and nieces, and just noticing that there's like this gap that you have with your family, right? And it just kind of goes like this over time. Right. If you don't water it like a plant, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And that's when it really hit me that there's a fork in this road. Right. If I continue down one path, I'm going to be an excellent trauma surgeon. I'm going to be an excellent physician, maybe even be able to provide for my family. But at what cost? If I don't have that type of relationship with my family, if I don't have that type of relationship, even with myself. Right. If I feel like I'm not kind of walking into things that I want to do really in my life and I'm just kind of following someone else's plan, at what cost is it worth? Yeah. And it wasn't until actually when I finished my last year of training, I started working in a temporary fashion. We call it locum tenens, literally picture temp agency work for a doctor. And when I started doing that work, I would travel away. I'd literally go to another state, work for a couple of weeks and then come home and take care of my parents, make sure they're okay. You know, me and my girlfriend finally became engaged. So we would, you know, catch up. And I started meeting people who were doing some really interesting things with their lives. I'm talking about physicians. Yeah. There were doctors who would literally be living in the United States, maybe for several weeks for the entire year. They would do this temporary work and use that money to kind of pay and subsidy the work that they would do in other countries when they would do like medical humanitarian work. We're talking about like Somalia, we're talking about Rwanda, we're talking about, you know, the Ivory Coast, like things that, you know, places that were, you know, having some issues, they would work there. And they would just be in the United States just for a short period of time. Or doctors who were on TV, they were medical consultants. It's like, you got to think in my head, I'm like, I didn't know this. This is, and they're happy. And they're happy. Ooh. And they're having impact. Ooh. Right? Like they're I'm like, wait.
Hold on. I got to cut you off. Because I already told you, bro, be careful because I might cut you off. I mean, I don't think people understand, you know, I'm going to say this word, but you feel when I say it. When you get so engulfed in the hospital, when you get so engulfed in the walls, when you get so in like 12, 14, 16-hour days of doing, of being there, you begin to accept the lack of identity. You begin to now bring on this identity of doctor, and it's almost like it's separating you from what you were. You even told me one of your family members called you out, like, hold up, bro, like you ain't even talking the language, man. Like you come in, like, kind of checked you, like, you know what I'm saying? And I think this isn't just for us as physicians, but I'm almost certain it's going to be in other like high level driven professional work that you can get to this place where you like something has to happen in order for you to kind of get slapped in the face to be like, yo, man, if I don't get it. And then you have this situation where you start seeing other people doing things that immediately expands the mind. Be like, it's not that I don't even know. I didn't even think about potentially practicing like this or being like this.
Right. That's the key, you know, is once you see what the opportunities are, how are you going to react? Right. That's the ultimate key in how this stuff is, right? Once you get exposed to something, what are you going to do? Right. Are you going to just continue the default way, which is the easiest way, and just continue down a path of, you know, you just do what is already, you know, trailblazed or blazed for you, the path that's already walked? Or are you going to try to do something different? Right. And I got a taste of it. And when I started doing that type of work and meeting with those type of people, it was just when I went back and started working as an employed physician, like you said, my white coat no longer just had my name on it. It had the name of the hospital, had my name on it. But really, the thing that was really important was the brand of the hospital. Right. And I just felt like I was debranded. And like you said, you have these 16-hour, you know, for me, sometimes 24-hour, 36-hour shifts. And you just get into this, you feel like you're on this hamster wheel of life. Right. And you start to look at people who are older than you, some of my colleagues, and they retire. And it's just like, wow, like it literally had like a retirement tea party or a retirement party. And then the next day, boom, someone back in. It's almost like a cog. You just get taken out and you put back in. And this is something that's not just in medicine. This is in everything, right? Everything that you do. And that was when I really started to say, man, like, I know what these other folks were doing. I could either stay employed and it's safe, quote unquote, to do this, or I
do like everybody else is doing, which, by the way, people don't realize. So many of the docs are unhappy that you just accept unhappiness as an identity. It's almost like doctor equals overworked, underpaid, and unhappy.
And when they realize that, some of them will fight you if you try to question the system, which is just like, this is like asylum thinking, right? It's crazy. It like I said, it's not just medicine. I'm sure the people who are in other careers or professions, they know what we're talking about, because they may be interested in real estate, or they may be interested in some type of online business, or some type of hustle. And there's someone at work who's saying, dude, why are you doing X, Y, and Z? Why don't you just focus on what we're doing here, right? And that's when you know you're actually onto something, right? That's when you know you're actually onto something.
That's the key. I hope everybody listening. When somebody is like, when they like, hold up, man, what you doing? That's reason to be like, hold up, maybe I do have something here. But that's not typically what we think.
Right. There's a sense of I want to conform. There's a sense that I got to assimilate. And that's a really powerful drug, right? Let's be honest. It's a real powerful drug when someone tells you, listen, you're not acting the way how everybody else acts. And then you combine it with the fact that it's a check, right? You're like, I don't want to question that. But I got set down this path where I started seeing people really succeed by just doing things on their own. And I just started consuming, podcasts and blogs, and started reading about certain things, and then finding out that the people who I've been watching and listening to, through these podcasts are either younger than me or my age. And that's when I was like, you know what? Like, if I wait till I'm 50 or 60, it's too late for me, at least.
Yeah.
I got to start now, right? I got to start now. So,
but you come to this aha moment, like, man, like maybe like you see other docs doing things that are atypical, quote unquote, outside the box. They're happy. They're kind of, practicing in their own way. And so you kind of come to this aha moment, like you said, when this happens, you got a decision to make.
right.
But then you started realizing financially, like, hold up, man, like I've been so stuck in the weeds of what I'm doing. I'm not where I need to be financially.
Right.
Tell us about that, because a lot of folks don't understand. Docs, we are uneducated because no one takes us by the hand and shows us this stuff.
That was
because now we're getting into the money part.
Yeah, that was the toughest pill to swallow, actually, accepting that I didn't know much about finance. And dog, at this time, I had an MBA. I still
stop. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. I was in a dual degree program before residency. My medical school gave us our DO degree and then our MBA in healthcare leadership. We did finance, we did marketing, we did econ, micro and macro, finance,
man,
accounting.
All the big words too. All the big words.
All of them.
Using all the MBA words.
You don't know. I got another tab in here. I'm looking at the tab while I'm talking to you, pulling up these definitions.
Wow.
But for real, I had all that stuff. So to be a surgeon, to have an MBA, and to admit that I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't even know really how to budget. I don't even know how to invest. It was a really tough pill to swallow. And the reason why it became really tough is, my parents are from Ghana. And when they came, they were blue collar. They are blue collar workers, and, there's this thing called the safety tax, or, a lot of people who are listening to this show who are immigrants know what I'm about to say, where when you have family members who come from a different country, usually the first generation that's born in the United States after that has to pay the safety tax. And what I mean by that is you have to go into a profession that's very safe, right? So we're talking about a doctor, a teacher, a lawyer, an engineer, right? These are the things that you have to become. Otherwise, anything else, you might as well just be, on the streets, right? If you want to start a business, like, what do you mean to start a business? Like, how is that going to entrepreneurship? How is that really going to relate to anything? Like, no, you need to go and become a doctor or a lawyer or what have you.
Right.
So that's kind of, I wasn't forced to do that, but it was kind of understood, if you know what I mean.
It was expected. Yeah, it was expected. This unwritten rule kind of thing.
Oh yeah. So when my parents, probably both of them combined, I'll just leave it to you like this, very blue collar, working very hard. And by the time I got to the point where, I'm making six figures, me and my wife were literally close to about $900,000 in debt. That's student loans, as she's a doctor, also got an MBA also, as well as, a condo that we had, that I got in Atlanta, and also, living paycheck to paycheck. So I was really disappointed in myself. I'm like, wait, my parents came here, we're living their entire lives paycheck to paycheck, and then they have a son, and now I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and I'm making exponential more than they are. Like, is there any progress? And that's when it really slapped me in my face, like, this is not the way it's supposed to be. And that was it. That was the last pill, and since then I never looked back.
So I love the fact that we're talking about this, because, at this point, man, it's this idea that you're completely unaware, right? Like, prior to coming to understanding this stuff, it's like this stuff is happening, but you don't realize either how bad it is or that it's happening. And it's almost kind of like living in the dark, right? Until somebody turns the light on, and then you realize, like, either everything done been stolen or you got roaches all around, stuff that you didn't even realize was going on, right? And so, I mean, right?
It's the truth.
But it's the truth. But it's the truth. And so it's, people are at this place right now, Dr. Nee, it's coronavirus has exposed some things. You know what I'm saying? Either your finances ain't right, or either the relationships aren't right, or, either, the job isn't right, but something's not right because this thing has exposed some things that you probably were completely unaware of. But this is the part that I love, because see, I saw you years later after you already started transforming. I didn't know all this happened from the time whenever we was doing residency to when, but a lot happened. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't just like, all right, well, let me just keep on, going to work. Let me keep on going to work.
Let me take my lunch pail with me.
Yeah. Right. And just try to take a blind eye to stuff. It's like, it's time to make moves. So this is the part I like, because in any great story, we got to go to the down. At this point, your things aren't well, man. I mean, like you said, you realize that you're failing in multiple areas, even though you've been working hard. And it's probably nothing worse than working so hard and then realizing like, I should be way further than I am right now. And not only that, but I'm further along. I'm further much back than I ever thought I would ever be. But now it's time to put in work. It's time to put in work. So what did you do, man? Like, what did you do at this point to turn things around financially, to get this mission, like I want to do something, eventually get into the podcast, and then start getting this mindset right? What did you do?
Well, first things first is I recognized and I admitted to myself that I didn't know anything about finance. I didn't know anything about money. And being as busy as I am, there was two ways I could have gone about this. I could have just said, you know what, I'll just pay someone and blah, 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 and I'll just work it out. Or, on my time off, when I'm driving to work, when I have a day off, I'll start consuming, digital media, right? So I started downloading audiobooks on personal finance. But the key thing for me was podcasts. Podcast on personal finance really changed it up, because it's more than just reading a book. You're actually getting a personality, right? You're tuning in not just for the information, but you're tuning in to be entertained by the host of the show. So I started consuming this content and just understanding things like, I didn't know people were paying cash for their cars. I didn't know that people actually paid their debt off. Seriously, I didn't know people were paying their debt off earlier than when you're supposed to be paying off your debt. Like, I thought that you followed the schedule and then that was it. And I didn't understand
that you just pay the minimum. That you just pay the minimum and just keep on going.
Yeah, right. I didn't know that like people paid ahead. I was like, wait, what? So when someone was saying, yeah, we paid our student loans off in like 5 years, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what? That's I don't believe that. So I just started learning about all these different things. And then I talked to my wife and I was honest with her. I was like, look, this is what I learned. You want to take a listen? We would listen to the show together. And then the key thing for us is we started dreaming together about what we really wanted our life to be like, right? So the key things were, look, like, do we really want to be in the next 10 years kind of always crossing paths? And what I mean by that is, like, I come home at a certain time at night and then she's probably going to work at the opposite time of night, or, we become this itinerant relationship, or itinerant parents, because if we have kids and, I got to be home by this time because of X, Y, and Z. And all of that stuff, at the root of all of that stuff, of all that pain and all of that type of life that I didn't want to live, at the root of that was, I got to work because I got to pay off the student loans. Right. So that was the key pain factor that I encourage a lot of people when they're having a hard time with either procrastination or launching, is find that key pain point that is bugging you and irking you, and you got to focus on that and see if you can fix it. So for me, the pain issue for me was, well, I don't want to end up with my life being like this, but I can't change it until I pay off my student loans. My student loans are so big, I got to go to work to pay it off. I got to do something.
Yes.
And that's when all of this started. That's when I said, you know what? I got to start taking some double shifts. I got to start when I work, I got to make sure I start working more efficiently. Otherwise, I'm just going to drop dead at work. Me and my wife kind of figure out a way to make sure that we combine our finances, right? Like I was pretty ignorant at first. I was just like, oh, you have your money, I have my money, we'll both pitch in to pay for the finances. And my wife was just like, yeah, no, it's not going to work. And then she showed me the mathematics and she was like, this is why it doesn't work. And I was like, okay, bet. Put all our money together.
Yeah.
And we just started tackling the debt. We started thinking about what life would be like without debt. And then at the same time, I was just thinking, I was like, you know what? There are not many podcasts out there. I don't see any podcasts out there about doctors who are doing what I'm doing, or doctors.
Bro, hold up. I gotta stop you. Bro. When you said y'all started dreaming together, man, I got excited.
Yeah.
I got excited. And let me tell you why I got excited. It's because I think a lot of people, this is so good. I hope everybody's listening. A lot of people want stuff to change. I don't know somebody who don't want something to change in their life. I don't care what it is. You got a goal, you got something that you're trying to aim for. Or you trying to, at least like you said, there's something that's painful enough, and make that your motivation. I love when you said that. Like, make that your motivation. But a lot of people, they know they want something to change, but they don't know what they want it to change to.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you said, man, we started dreaming. We started dreaming what it's like to be out of debt. We started dreaming what it was like to of what we wanted. One of the biggest questions I ask people, man, even some of my clients, one of the first questions, what do you want? What do you want? Everybody here who's listening to this, who's watching, what do you want?
That's the key thing.
You got to write it down. I dare you write it down, because if you write it down up in here, I'm gonna hold you accountable. But like, what do you want? And so the fact that you talk about that dreaming, man, it's like that's such a huge key. Is because not only you got to realize, I'm not where I want to be, but where do I want to be? And then it will draw you to be able to go to, I love that, man.
Well, and then the other thing too that I want people to grab from this is I'm very lucky to have my wife. She pushes me in ways in which I never dreamed of. And I do the opposite too. I push her also. But I think sometimes people who aren't in a relationship, they sometimes feel discouraged, or they may say, well, that's because you're with someone who's able to push you. And what I say is nowadays, with the way how things are with the internet, there's something that's called virtual mentorship. And what I mean by that is surrounding yourself with people that you may not know personally, but surrounding yourself with positive people who put out content, on a very consistent basis, and surrounding yourself with that daily. So for me, driving into work, listening to podcasts about paying off debt, driving home from work, listening to the same thing. If we go on a really long trip, doing an audiobook on, how to interview someone, or how to be more efficient with how, I'm billing or something like that. Just things that I was listening to on a consistent basis, so that I'm always listening and always around positive energy. Because there wasn't anybody in my family who was, one, either interested or really could understand the significant amount of debt that I was in. And didn't really understand, okay, well, you guys are two doctors. How are you guys just living on $200 a month on food? Because that's what we did when we decided to budget. That's how painful that's how much we wanted to get out of debt, is we dropped our budget to $200 a month. So people are like, what do you mean I don't get this. Like, why are you driving a used car? Why aren't you buying a house? Like, we already got a house. It's under the mortgage of Sally Mae. Like, doing things that people couldn't understand. But when we were listening to the podcast, when we were reading the blog or watching the YouTube channels, they were in that. So it almost felt like we were like in this world, right? And we were, protected by it. So I tell people, if you don't have a significant other who's there for you like that, you still jump in on that and get that influence from all of these different sources.
Man, if I got to tell people, man, look, if you're not where you want to be in your career, you got to take a step back. I mean, bro, you got to take a step back. I mean, and start realizing, like, there's people outside that, like, if you're feeling the itch to do something else, man, you got to go, and you got to start hanging around that, because thinking about it, hanging around where you are in your career right now got you thinking the way you think, and you starting to realize, I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'm just being real. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, you know what I'm saying?
It's true.
Like, but the reality is, I started thinking, like, I can't do anything else. Like, I'm not, I want to speak, I want to do some other stuff, and you suppress that stuff so long, eventually, like, you start thinking, like, nah, I ain't supposed to do that. And like you said, people start looking at you, be like, man, why are you trying that? Or why are you doing this? Like, I can remember people, like, when I was, writing a book or getting this stuff started, it's like, bro, you're a doctor. Like, you don't want to do that the rest of your life? And I'm like,
right.
Like, well, that ain't the only thing I want to do. Like, And now I'm to the point where now I'm like, look, you know, you ain't doing something else. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why aren't you doing something? That's my question. Like, okay, you do that. Okay, that's great. What else you doing? You
Right.
know. But you
And
gotta get, but you gotta get some different input, basically, man. You gotta start getting around people. It ain't gotta be not somebody. The fact that you did the podcast, and because I'm gonna ask you later, like, we're gonna get into, some of these people who say like, well, I ain't got the time. I ain't got the. Well, I'm gonna get that in a minute. But
because it doesn't. I mean, I've heard all these different excuses, and this is the world we live in right now. Like, your excuse is not going to fly. There's so many solutions nowadays for everything, but we'll get into that later, man.
Yeah. So people are trying to figure out, yeah, man, how can I be more than my career? One, I think, is recognizing that you're not in that spot. You're in a spot that you don't want to be at. And you gotta admit that. And I'll be honest, Dr. Need, that was something difficult for me because I wrestled with the fact, like, how am I unhappy? But you almost want to justify fighting that unhappiness because you like, because I should be happy because I spent so much money, time, and energy to get to where I am, that you don't want to admit that you may not be as fulfilled as you would like to be. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and that's the key. That's the key thing is like, well, do I stay in the same place and just kind of assimilate, or do I say and look at, like you say this a lot, try to find, even though there's a situation that's making you uncomfortable, think about how hard it was for you to get to that point, particularly if you're a physician. We're talking about 12, 13 years of training. If for me as a surgeon, we're talking about days where I would work 24, oftentimes, 36 hours, come back and, get 12 hours and then come back and do it again. So I can do that, but I can't start a business. I can't start real estate. I'm too afraid to start real estate. You've seen it. I've cracked open chests with blood in there. You've been there. You've done it, bro. We put in chest tubes of blood sticking out. I've been like, look, we gotta go. Let's go. One of the hardest things, and then I'm too scared, or people are too scared to start a business. I was there, and we all get. Look, nobody. I haven't met that one person who's like Kobe Bryant all the time, right? Like, or Michael Jordan. All the, like, we have people we have fears, right? And that's why we have coaches, right? Or there are times when we need encouragement, right? But all I'm just saying is that if you look at what you've been able to accomplish in your life so far, you can pick up all of these little tidbits of skills that you've done that will make you very successful doing something that is non-traditional. So don't discount yourself because you're stuck in one thing. You've done things and it's already there. You just got to be able to flush it out.
Yeah, particularly for a lot of high achieving brothers, man. I mean, if you've already done something, I mean, it's likely you were probably already 1% of the world. I mean, so you've been doing something that's, 5% of the world, heck, 10% of the world. I mean, your likelihood of being able to do that is going to be high. So I want to say, you start implementing these things. You guys got rid of that debt. You turn things around.
Yeah, we got rid of that debt. And we actually did it faster than we thought we were going to do it, mainly because, we got so focused on it. Like I said, there was a point where when we did our budget, we were spending close to $400, $500 a month on, perishable items because we were in the hospital so long. We would buy food at the cafeteria, but we would also go to the local supermarket and buy food. We weren't buying organic or anything like that. We don't do Whole Foods or any of that stuff, right? It's too expensive, right? We're not, right? But it's just, so you buy all this food and it dies. So we just say, you know what? Let's try $200 a month and then give each other a $50 allowance. Give each other a $50 allowance each for the entire month for when we go to the hospital and eat.
Laser focused.
We messed up, the first 3, 4, 5 months. But when we messed up, right? Like we went over budget by like what? $200. So now we're spending $400 maybe. And then each month it got down to like, $250, then $200. And then after that, for, years, we just stuck at $200. Now, obviously we got kids, so there's no way that we could just stay at $200. We have to increase it a little bit. But those are the type of moves that we were willing to make because we thought that, debt was just abhorrent. you know, and then I started doing extra work. I started, I would work for 2 weeks and then I would fly to another place and work for additional 2 weeks. And what we decided to do is my wife she was part-time, so she made a little bit less than I did. So what we decided to do is to live on her salary. And then we used my salary, and then all the extra work that I did went all towards student loan debt.
Yo, look, I'm trying to tell y'all, man. My man went in. Like, they got rid of I don't know if y'all heard him say 900,000. I mean, y'all almost cracked that mill. I mean, $900,000 in debt, eliminated it, and now debt-free, building assets, got this got this podcast, which you need to listen to, Docs Outside the Box, with sponsors, right? With sponsors.
Yeah, we got sponsors. Oh yeah.
Quote unquote, it's pays him. So we talk about the money thing. This is why you talk about money. And I talk about calling a lot on this show, is that was a scar that you had. That was a scar that you figured out how to heal. You grinded on, and it's like, I need to help other docs because I know what it feels like to be in that place from a money situation, right? Then you come and you tackle the mission part. You're like, well, my mission is to start this podcast because that's how it happened for me. Yeah. So many people have to realize, like, a lot of your purpose, your calling is going to be set on the pain that you got through in the past. Again, quoting Dr. Jared, like I had Dr. Jared on last week, it's like these pains that we going through right now. I'm so excited because in a few years, man, with all this coronavirus stuff going on, people going through pain. Let me tell you, man, it's going to be a lot of people getting helped in a couple years because they're going to turn around, fix their stuff. They got somebody like you, Dr. Nee, out here that's just like, now they grinding. They're like, babe, we're going to have to live off your salary. I'm going to go work. They're going to turn it around and they're going to teach other people how to do it. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, this is the magical part. But then now you get on mission. And then you mentioned a little bit about mindset. How did you change your mindset around this whole thing? Like you're obviously you talk different, you think different, you obviously feel more capable. You were just talking about how other people, like, you do all these amazing things in your life as a doctor or as a lawyer, as whatever you do. Like, why can't you start a business? How did you start getting that mindset?
Well, the biggest thing is when I started my podcast, I knew that there were certain not inadequacies, but I knew that there were certain weaknesses that I had. The biggest one was I would get very nervous when I would do public speaking.
Wow.
And the other thing too is when I write very scientifically, which is very boring, so to speak. Just another word, write very boringly. So I knew I couldn't start a blog, and then I didn't want to do a YouTube channel because I don't know. Me looking at a camera was just difficult for me. So I said, I'll start a podcast. And my first episode, even my wife looked at me and she listened to it. She was like, yeah, you can't put that out. You know what I'm saying? You can't put that out. You're going to have to re-edit this. You're going to have to, like, I don't know, throw away the cue cards. Cause it sounded like a robot. Hey guys, my name is Dr. Nee. It was horrible. And I haven't even listened to it since, the first time I put it out. And that's like 4 or 5 years ago. But the key thing is that I really started to embrace the concept, 2 important concepts. One is, I heard this from Gary Vee, is I can, play this game where I can be perfect and try to make sure that everything is exactly perfect. And I more than likely won't start my podcast, or I won't start whatever I want to start. And then I don't want to be in a nursing home, be in my 80s and 90s and have regret, because from me, when you tell people to go to a nursing home, one of the most painful things you see in people is regret. So I didn't want to have regret in my life with that. So that was one of the biggest, you need to move forward. And then the other thing too is just I started realizing that the people who I was looking up to, quote unquote, who were starting their own blogs and doing things with them, they weren't perfect. They weren't any different than me. Right? They weren't any better than me. They weren't any worse than me. They were just willing to just make mistakes. And when you look at some people, when you listen to their blogs and you go all the way down to episode 1, or you see their YouTube channels and you go all the way to episode 1, you see like it's really bad, but they just kept at it and kept going. So that was what kept me going. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start my podcast. I'm gonna keep it going. I know that I'm gonna be horrible at first. And just keep going and going. And then all of a sudden people start writing in like, hey, Dr. Darko, hey, Nee, like, I like what you're talking about. You like this podcast? What? all right, I'll keep going, you know. And then it literally is like, I'm like looking at my wife like, yo, these people, what's wrong? What do you mean you like my podcast? So I just kept going, and then the rest is history. And I stopped worrying about being perfect. And then I got a coach, you know, and that really helped me to get over some of the fears I had with failing, some of the fears that I had with being, you know, procrastinating and so forth. So it's a work in progress.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, because I can remember when I met you at the conference, and I was like, yo, you were like, oh man, like, what are you doing here? And he straight up hit me. He straight up hit me with, I was like, he's like, yeah, man, I got the podcast in it. And then like, I never forget this. Like the next like speaker was about to start, and you were like, oh man, yeah, look, go ahead and download the podcast and you know.
I think I took your phone.
Yes.
I was like, yo, give me your phone, yeah.
Yeah, he got my phone. He literally, and then was like, yeah, go ahead and get you know, put that 4 or 5
I'm gonna hook you up. I'm gonna hook you up. Let me just do 5-star real quick. Let me do it.
And like he gave my phone back, and then he walked out. I was like, what happened? Like, my man started a podcast. I didn't know all of this stuff that had happened through then. So magnificent stuff can happen, man. Look, what do you say to the people who say, I don't have the time. I don't have the money to do what I want to do. What do you say to that?
Well, I say that one, you know, not having the time, not having the money. I understand that. The key things is just realizing that depending on how painful your current situation is for you, whatever it may be, you got to be able to use that pain point as a motivation to really prop you into something different. You're going to make mistakes, right? With the way how technology is, whatever you want to do, if you want to do something on social media, if you feel like getting knowledge is difficult, you have to hack your way to a point where you can take the next step. If you're on your way to work and you want to learn about something that is real estate or starting a business, you can get an audiobook, you can use YouTube, you can listen to it, you can get virtual mentorship, right? It's really about just taking a step back, dreaming about where you want your life to be, and not being afraid to really take step 1, step 2, step 3. And the key thing too that I tell people who say that is listen, when you hear that, you oftentimes, what they're really focused on is they're focused on the prize instead of the process, right? So for example, I want my show to be just like some of the top shows on Apple Podcasts, number 1, number 2, number 3. But when you're starting, like, you're not gonna get to that point. And if you are waiting for your show to get to the point where it's that perfect, then you're waiting too long, right? It's going to take time, the showing up, the recording, the meeting the guests, the making the mistakes, the uhs, the ums, the awkward silences, the asking dumb questions, the editing incorrectly. All of those different things are part of the process that over time will increase the reps to the point where you'll be so surprised in 5 months, in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years at the change that occurred for you. So I always tell people, if there's not enough time, or you don't feel like you have enough money, it's always just taking step 1, then show up again, take step 1 again, then step 2, then step 3, step 4. You can hack your way to success, because so many people are doing it right now. So don't feel like you're alone.
The other thing is, man, you mentioned something key as well. For a lot of folks who are, they've gone to school for a long time. We're talking about postgraduate school and all these degrees and stuff like this. It took time to be an expert that pays you a significant income or salary. Like, it just took time. And it takes time. And even though I've been practicing for almost a decade now, guess what? I'm way better at some of these injections and procedures that I do now.
You just made me feel old.
I know, right? You've been practicing for almost a decade, bro. Like, it's crazy. This me just turning 40 ain't no joke. But yeah, man, it's just like, I'm better now than I was, 10 years ago. And I was just starting as a doctor. And it took a while to get to there. And so for me, when people say they don't have time, I'm like, but you have time to still not be happy, still doing what you're doing. That doesn't compute to me. So it's like, we got to make a move. We got to make moves, because we can't just say, well, I don't have time, but you know what? I got time to kind of stay unhappy.
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Time is still moving. As you're saying, you don't have time. Time just moves. So what are you going to do? Like, you got to make a move, right? You got to take a step forward. So
man, as we wrap up, man, I want to know, because potentially there's going to be somebody, as this gets turned into a podcast and as people can watch this again in the future, who may be coming across this thinking like, yo, like, I feel like I'm in a box, or maybe we've shed some light on it to where they're like, yeah, man, like, I have always felt like it was something else I'm supposed to be doing, or like, I'm more than just a fill in the blank, you know? What'd you tell that person who's thinking that, but is hesitating? You know what I'm saying? They're hesitating to make a move, and maybe they just became aware, like, yeah, I'm not really where I want to be with the title that I currently have, and I think there's something else out there for me.
Well, I tell people that we're a community, and we're all connected in some form or fashion. And I tell people this story because it's really powerful. So in 2014, when financially I didn't know what to do with my money, I found this couple called His and Her Money. They created a YouTube channel called Why We Have 13 Bank Accounts. And in that video, they talked about they have an account for future car purchases. They have an account for, food. They have an account for all these different things because they don't want to use credit or finance anything ever again. And that's when I started to realize I didn't know people bought cars with cash. And I listened to these guys every day or every other day for 3 or 4 years. We got our debt paid off in 3 years. Wow. Me and my wife ended up on their show. And then I just recently interviewed them, and I literally took the time to just thank them for just putting this content out. And one of the things that they told me, they were like, we were going through our situation also, but we decided to share our journey with everyone, knowing that we're not perfect, but just kind of letting people know the process, the step 1, the step 2, the step 3, the reps that we were taking, and what it was really doing for us as a family, for our family tree, and for our children. The reason I tell that story is, and I say that we're all connected as a community is you never know. Actually, you going through whatever you're going through, you might be actually helping someone else who doesn't know how to verbalize that to actually make a move also. That's the reason why I really started the podcast, is like, I may not have figured out everything to be a doc outside the box, but me just going through this process and sharing my imperfect story may encourage someone else to really not make the mistakes that I made. So I always tell people, take that journey, take that step. Don't be afraid. You're going to make mistakes, but ultimately know that maybe your purpose is to help other people who are in a situation just like you, or people who look like you or look up to you. And they can look at you as, a means of being a mentor or some type of example so that they can move forward also. And once you take it out of I have to be perfect, and actually maybe someone is looking at me and they just can learn from my mistakes, that's what really inspires people.
And at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's not about us. Yeah. It's about other people. That's one of the things that motivates me, man. I gotta say,
Brad, you say way better than I do it. See, that's why you're good at this, man. It's not about you. I spoke for like 3 minutes. You're like, yeah. It's not about you.
Well, like you said, man, we all connected. We all connected. I gotta say this, man. I'm inspired by you, man. It's crazy how our paths have crossed from training now all the way to, being on each other's show, us collaborating on things now, because I'll be launching some stuff soon where you'll be helping some of the men that I'll be helping, the ones who want to start podcasts. So thank you, man. Thank you for taking action like you have, so that, guys like myself can be inspired and be like, hold up, man, if Dr. Nee did it, I can do it, So I appreciate you, having the courage to do this, man. So thanks, bro.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And really, for me, I really appreciate you putting me on your platform. I know you take it very seriously. I know there's a lot of people out there who you're helping. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your platform. Keep up the great work, man.
Appreciate it, man. Where can people find you, man? Because obviously I want people to listen in. You don't have to be a doc, trust me. I mean, you heard my man, dropping knowledge on you the whole time and nuggets that you can do to be able to apply to your life. Where can they find you?
So if you want to find out about my podcast, you could find it anywhere where you can get your favorite music, your podcast. You just type in Docs Outside the Box. So we're talking about Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, anywhere where you get any of that stuff, we there. If you want to know more about me personally, just go to my website, drneedarko.com. That's DRNII, and then my last name, darko.com. And then I'm on social media everywhere as Dr. Nee Darko, DRNIIDARKO.
There we go right there. So you guys can go. Make sure you follow him on all the social media channels. I love whenever he drops a new podcast and he give you a little snippet about what it's about. He point in different directions to where you got to go to be able to click on it. So that's right. Point up, click up here, click down here. Man, it's been a pleasure having you on, man. I appreciate it. And obviously you and I are going to be talking soon, man. So thanks.
Hey, looking forward to it.
All right, you guys. So again, another end of a phenomenal show. Like I said, we're pivoting, man. We're talking about performance. We're talking about stuff like mindset. We're talking about how to be able to get you in action to do the things that you need to do, how to be able to get the habits straight, how to grind. My man was just grinding to be able to get laser focused to get things done. Because right now, I think we as men, not just men, but everybody, but as my focus is on men, is to be able to just get you in action and get you to overcome these obstacles and these challenges and the things that are stopping you from being the best man that you can possibly be, so that you can live that life of simultaneous success and fulfillment. All right, you guys, listen, it's been an absolute blessing. We'll be back next week, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, bringing another phenomenal guest to you to be able to help you do 3 new things: achieve your goals, increase your productivity, and pursue your purpose. See you guys next week.